So in 2013, what had happened was Missouri and Texas A&M had come into the Southeastern Conference, and the SEC was trying to make sure that everybody was getting the game squared away, that they needed to get squared away, and magically Georgia played back-to-back games at Auburn in 2012 and 2013. Now they were not the only people that got into this situation in the league. Ole Miss and Alabama had the same problem, but that game's not quite the same as Georgia Auburn. And the question is always, is the SEC ever going to correct that here in the future? Is there ever going to be a back to back game in Athens to square things away? And if there is, about now would be the time that you could pull that off. So stick with me as I go through this sort of intricate stuff here. Um, Georgia in 2012, of course, went down to Auburn. It was an odd year. Excuse me, it was an even year, and those were the years that Georgia traditionally played at Auburn. Think about 1980, the overtime game in 1996, which was the first overtime game in SEC history. Lay down Dogs, which was 1992, or that might have been the South Carolina game. I can't remember what. When Auburn went for it on first and goal, with time running out on the goal line. That was not the greatest look for Pat Dye, but a lot of classic Georgia Auburn. Well, 2002, David Green to Michael Johnson was the corner of the end zone at Auburn. Matthew Stafford in 2006. So even games were always at Auburn because of the way that the schedule worked out, and because of Texas A&M and Missouri coming in. The schedule makers at the SEC had to juggle things, and one of the things that was going to happen was either Georgia Auburn was not going to happen in 2013, or Georgia would have to go to Auburn. It was a quirk really in Auburn's schedule, as I recall, more than anything. The fact that the game would have left them, if they had played it in Athens like it was supposed to be played in 13. It would have been something like Auburn would have had 3 games or something. I can't remember the home game situation. I'll look it up as I talk though. So in 2012, that didn't matter at all because of course Auburn was horrific, and they fired Gene Chizik at the end of that year. I still have images of that game in 2013 where 2012, excuse me, where Todd Gurley and Keith Marshall are running just hog wild all over everybody at Auburn. Then they won that game 38-0, something like that. It was nasty. And then you look at 2013, and I'm just looking right now. So Auburn hosted State, Ole Miss, Georgia, and Alabama. So they had that game been the way it traditionally is. For whatever reason, Auburn would have had 3 home SEC games to 5 aways. So that was just something that I know Georgia wanted to play Auburn. It was something that they were eager to do to keep that rivalry going. But I don't know if there was a deal made to say, hey, we're going to get this straight in the future. But I'm not aware that was the case, by the way. But it's never happened. And of course, in 2013, you may or may not remember, there was a miracle play where Auburn beat Georgia to win that game and go on to play in the SEC championship game and eventually lose to Florida State the last time the Noles won a national championship, which was 2013. A year later, Georgia hosted Auburn in Athens on an even year. It was odd. It was very strange. And the other thing for Auburn was the fact that now that the other problem now that can rectify this is, Auburn plays Georgia and Alabama now every single season at the same time, at the same year. So years gone by, even was Georgia, odd was Bama. Now it's just odd years. You get Georgia and Bama in the same year, so it's not ideal for Alabama. One problem. I'm going to show you some of these images from the 2013 game, which is the one that I was talking about. And by the way, that was one of the wildest games I've ever been around. There was a targeting play at the end of that game that was completely missed by officials. I mean, strikingly bad targeting. This was Aaron's reaction with Marlo Herrera after going up to confirm Georgia's not game, what turned out to be game leading touchdown. But that was a wild game. Auburn got way up, and then Georgia came back to essentially win the game until that miracle play happened with former Georgia cornerback Nick Marshall throwing a touchdown to and Trey. I mean, it's just such a mess of Georgia Auburn the way that that game always is. But what's never happened since is that game has never gotten back to Athens for 2 seasons in a row. It's not balanced up in the way that it should. So when is that going to happen? Is that going to happen? Well, now is the exact time that could happen, and here's the reason why. The SEC, of course, is going through a huge, I don't know what to call this these days. They're trying to figure out how to balance this schedule out and to do everything that they need to do in order to make these games. Here's a Marlowe. So here's Nick Marshall throwing. This is amazing, 2 images in a row. Here is Nick throwing the miracle play, and here is the absolute next image. That's a Marlo Herrera right there reacting to the miracle on the plains. I mean, that was a wild moment in time, and then of course Georgia came flying down the field, trying, very nearly winning the game on the last play of the game. They certainly did not. The officials did not call that targeting play, which was, not surprising, to be honest with you. But whatever. They're not going to call stuff like that on the last play of the game. But if Georgia could, I know privately that administrators at Georgia would like to have this rectified and would like to have this particular. They agreed to it. Georgia agreed to it. They wanted to play Auburn in 2013. They wanted to keep that game going. I mean, it's a very important game. That's why I think you'll always see it get played. But Georgia hosting Auburn in back-to-back seasons, this would be about the only time you can pull that off from here on out, because there's just so much change going on right now. Like for instance, the 23 schedule is the last divisional schedule. 24, Georgia Auburn still continues to play. 25, we don't know that schedule yet, and we don't know 26 either. But this is the little window, and I'll be frank, I don't think it will happen. But if there is a window of time to do it, right now is the time to do that. I mean, if you want to correct what has happened in the past or give Georgia back what sort of their due, this would be the time to do that. It would also be time to give Ole Miss back what they missed at that time, which was they went to Tuscaloosa in back-to-back seasons in 12 and 13, if I'm not mistaken, or 12 and 14, or 13 and 14. I cannot recall exactly which year it was for Ole Miss, but they did the same thing as Georgia did, and so they went to Alabama in 13, and I think in 12. Yeah, they played in 12 and 13. Ole Miss and Georgia both played back-to-backs at Alabama, and then, for Georgia, they played at Auburn. So, this is a part of, for all of you conspiracy theorists, this is a part of being in a league. I mean, sometimes the league asks you to do things and, you do it. For instance, Georgia has always wanted the week off before Florida. They get that now every single year. And that was not the case for a very long time. And I mean a very long time, talking the whole 90s, basically. As far as Tennessee getting moved to the end of the season, that was something Georgia supported. That wasn't something that they had a real big problem with. In terms of Georgia, Auburn being moved up in the calendar, that was something that Auburn asked for, from my understanding, but that was something that Georgia was glad to go along with, because it was getting crowded, to be honest with you, at the end of Georgia's schedule. But that was always the way it was. But it was getting crowded with the Gators, and then you would have a sort of a decent game, and then Auburn, and sometimes you'd have Florida, decent game, Auburn, decent game, Tech, and that's just a tough way to end the season. But one way or another, there has been nothing approaching. Georgia has not received anything that I'm aware of, and I'm pretty sure I'd be aware. Georgia has not received anything that is the equivalent of playing a back-to-back game against your rival in your home place. I don't know. I don't know if you know, Jerry Moorhead and company can make that happen. I'm suspicious that they can, but it would be one thing that I think would balance out, um, correct what was, at this point it's getting to the stage where if it doesn't get corrected, it's wrong. If it doesn't, 10 years ago, Georgia was a good partner in doing that. They really need to be compensated for that, and that's just not happened in the last 10 years. And now there's an opportunity to do that. Will the SEC do that or not?